Hello, everybody, and welcome into another season preview show here at the Hockey Writers YouTube channel. And we're continuing going through the teams as we lead up to the 2024-25 season. And we're up to the Nashville Predators, who made a lot of changes in the offseason through a free agency. And I am joined by Lukas Bernasiewicz. How's it going, Lukas? Thanks for coming on. It's first time you're previewing the Nashville Predators here. How's it going?
Doing really well. Really excited for the season. Off season's always really good to sort of breathe, but ready to get back to training camp, ready to get this thing rolling.
For sure. Yeah, the summer is long. It seems like it's like 6 months once it's just three. It depends on, I guess, the team you're following. If the team gets eliminated in the playoffs really early or they don't make the playoffs in the offseason, it's obviously a lot longer. The Predators did get eliminated in the first round by the Vancouver Canucks in 6 games, although they did put up a pretty big fight. It was pretty close. A lot of the games were I think if Nashville was able to score more, I think they may have been in it a lot, a lot. It would have been even tighter, I guess. They may even won the series. Who knows? But yeah, they got up out in the first round, and then Barry Trotz went crazy in the offseason with mostly free agent signings. I did some trades as well because the Askarov thing. I mean, he wanted out, so that's a little bit of a change too. Although Askarov probably wasn't going to be any in the plans of the Predators for goaltending wise after signing Saros for so long. But let's just jump right in to this season, and we'll start with the forwards, which had two major additions. Uh, Jonathan Marchessault from the Vegas Golden Knights, and then the big one, Steven Stamkos signing from the Tampa Bay Lightning. And to me, was probably the biggest surprise. I did not think the Stamkos would be signing with Nashville of all teams. There were other teams, obviously, probably in the running to sign him. So let's start with Stamkos because I mean, Marchessault is a pretty big player too. So we'll get to him. But Stamkos joining the team, he is getting up there in age, but he's still a 40 goal scorer. So, what do you think his addition will do to the Predators forward lineup here?
Well, Matt, you talked about in the Canucks series how the Predators, if they scored more goals, might have even won that series. We were covering it because we're both Canucks writers, and Nashville controlled a good chunk of that series, maybe even more than half of it, but they couldn't score any goals. The majority of the games were 2-1, 3-2, and the one game where Nashville really got goals was the big game where they blew it in game
Yeah.
4 with the Brock Besser hat trick and Elias Lindholm overtime goal. And so with Stamkos and also Marchessault, we'll just talk about Stamkos right here. With Stamkos coming in, that gives the Predators a lot more options because this guy, even if I understand that Stamkos is a power play specialist, his best years he might be a power play specialist at this point of his career, and his best years are probably behind him. But if he can give you maybe even 30 goals, 35
Mhm.
goals, that's a big improvement for the Nashville Predators for a team that needed goal scoring and might have been 5 more goals away from the second round.
Mhm.
So having him, and I do think it's going to take about 10, 20 games for him to really fit in. That happens with all teams, and I think that everyone should factor that in. It does take a while for new guys to get acclimated with new teams, but once he gets acclimated, he's here for 4 more years,
Mhm.
and I think that that's really going to help the Predators in this next year, and I see them as a really interesting team this year.
For sure. I mean, the Central Division is a tough division. We'll talk later on in the show about that too. But they add Stamkos and then they go and also add Jonathan Marchessault, who is a Stanley Cup winner as well, and a previous 40 goal scorer. You add even more offense, and he's probably going to play with Stamkos on the second line if kind of the depth chart goes the way it is here. Because I think they'll keep the top line of Forsberg, O'Reilly, and Nyquist because they were really good all last season. So the second line right now is looking like Stamkos, Novak, and Marchessault. Although, I mean, the center may change. What do you think about Marchessault getting coming in? It's probably the similar thing to Stamkos, and Marchessault was just coming off not last season, but the previous year, a Conn Smythe Trophy. So he is again an older player, but he's still really productive, even so.
Well, you got your other side of the way. I think that Stamkos has been, you got your other side of the power play wing specifically. And so Stamkos has been that one timer on the power play in Tampa on the left side. And Marchessault, one of the best shots in the league, maybe in the top 10. And so having Stamkos on it's like how the Tampa Bay power play for years was absolutely lethal because you have Kucherov on the right side with the one timer, Stamkos on the left side with the one timer. Like you couldn't defend it. Growing up in Toronto, I was watching it firsthand, and it was deadly. And
Yeah.
so although Marchessault's not going to have the one timer is not really his game. It's really that shot off the wing, and that's his specialty.
Mhm.
So that's what's going to help them increase their goal scoring because it'll allow Stamkos to have his strengths and allow Marchessault for his strengths. That really patented snapshot off the rush that Marchessault has, the one timer that Stamkos has. That's why I got some high hopes for the Predators this year. I really like what this team is doing.
For sure. And before we move to the defense, I have one question though. The bottom six, I mean, are they really too top heavy, you think? Or because looking at their bottom six, there's not a lot of big names, but there were some guys that did quite well last season. Luca Evangelista is there on the third line as it looks right now. Is there any question marks for the bottom of the lineup, or are they too top heavy with all their offense? Or is that doesn't really matter, I guess.
Well, for me, I think right now you could definitely make the argument that they're too top heavy, but I think that they can address the bottom six come trade deadline, maybe even come January, because along with them having these big aspirations, the Nashville Predators have three first round picks
Yeah,
as
right.
well, which is crazy. It's crazy to think that they have three first round picks. That's a lot of draft capital to play with that they're probably going to get rid of at the trade deadline, and I would.
Mhm.
And if you look at the guys that are going to be unrestricted free agents and also, deadline buys, I wouldn't be surprised if they use a first round pick to get those bottom six players. They might even get a guy that you can argue is a second line guy and put him on the third line because they're
Mhm.
just too stacked on top. So I don't see it as a huge I don't see it as a huge problem right now. This could change, but as of right now, I think that that's something you can definitely address as the season goes forward.
For sure. And yeah, and you have some guys, surprising guys that could potentially do something like Evangelista had a really good season last year, and then he could take a step forward, and there's more offense in the bottom six. And Sissons is a very effective third line guy. So I mean, you could get the good enough offense, and like you said, they're first round picks. So they're gonna deal at least one of them before the deadline, and to maybe address that. We'll see. All right, looking at the defense, they made one addition and one subtraction. So they removed McDonough, sent him back to the Tampa Bay Lightning, and then signed Brady Shea from the Carolina Hurricanes to pretty much play with Roman Yossi on the top pairing. What do you think about the defense this season? I mean, pretty much the same group coming back, except for Shea getting basically swapping places with McDonough.
And I think that that's fine because they were already a really strong defensive team, and then you do the swap. I, for one, think that it's a sort of addition by subtraction situation. I don't think McDonough's a bad player, but he's obviously older, and Brady Shea, I think, is in his early 30s, whereas McDonough just in his mid 30s. So, and Brady Shea is he's not necessarily just a penalty kill specialist. He can score as well. I don't assume he'll do a lot of the scoring with playing with Yossi, but he can if needed, and I see him as a better defenseman right now than Ryan McDonough is.
Mhm.
So if they're improving even slightly on last year, then I think that they're fine because I think that even if they had that same defensive core that they had last season, they'd be fine. But even to get a slight upgrade, I think that their defense is great, and it's such a Barry Trotz type defense. Barry Trotz, we saw with his years when he was coaching in Long Island how much he loves to make his defensive teams.
Mhm.
And so I don't think that they're ever going to lack any defense while Barry Trotz is their general manager.
Yeah, I mean, they've always been a strong team defensively with their defensemen, and Shea is, I think, a better defenseman right now than McDonough. So I mean, and like you said, he can score too, and surprisingly, he seems to be able to score lately. So But I don't know how what the role will be with Yossi because obviously Yossi is the guy that goes up in the play quite a bit and gets a lot of points. So we'll have to see how that kind of balances. But yeah, their defense I think is still looking quite good. Even you know just I think a little bit of an upgrade with Shea too. So. All right, goaltending, it's pretty much it is the same except for a different backup. UC Saros is the starter still, and then you got Scott Wedgewood taking over for Kevin Lankinen, who was a backup last season. Of course, Askarov getting traded, so he's not going to be in the mix. Uh, Magnus Krona was the return in that. I don't think he's gonna make any noise in the tandem. So what do you think about this one? I mean, is Wedgwood about the same as what Lankinen brought? I mean, Sar's obviously going to play most of the games.
So when it comes to this huge trade, I'd say it was a huge trade with Askarov going to San Jose. Maybe it broke up what they anticipated their tandem to be for the future. Maybe it broke that up, and now they're going with Scott Wedgwood instead. I think Scott Wedgwood is a capable backup, but he's never been able to show that he can play 30 games and play 30 games consistently. A 30 game guy can throw up, 905, 910, something, very resourceful as a backup. He's never really proven that in his years in, New Jersey and in Dallas, and I'm probably forgetting a bunch of teams. So I do think it's gonna fall on the shoulders of UC Saros this year. He's probably gonna have to play 55, maybe even 60 games because goaltending is goaltending. It's such a crapshoot. It's such a crapshoot sometimes, especially like you know, uh, someone pulls their groin and they're done for 6 weeks. Like and now you're leaving your basically your entire team in the hands of someone else.
Mhm.
So I think this is going to be your UC Saros is this has got to be his big year. He just signed that extension that'll kick in the next season after this one. So he's got a lot to prove. He's got a lot to prove this year, and I think that this is going to be his year where he's going to play 50 to 60 games. So I think that's where Nashville is really going to have to rely on their goaltending is to see if he can play that amount of games this year.
Mhm. He played 64 last season, so I mean, I think he'll probably play around the same and still play quite well. So I mean, we'll see how they kind of split the goaltending. I mean, Wedgwood is a okay backup, but like you said, he hasn't really caught on anywhere. We'll see how many games he plays. He'll probably play around what Lankinen did. Lankinen started 17 games last season, so it'll probably be around there. I
And if I
don't
if I can
see
say if I could say one last thing, 64 is way too many games for a starting
it
goalie.
is, yeah.
It's way too many games. So they're gonna need to rely whether he's up to it or not, they're gonna have to rely on Wedgwood because there's no way your starting goalie can play 64 regular season games and then you hope and pray that nothing's gonna happen in the playoffs, that he's not gonna be burned out.
Yeah, no, it's true. I was gonna say that the days of goaltenders playing 70 games is out the window, and he almost got there. So I mean, it's insane. That's too many. It is too many games. It should be around the 50-ish mark, to for everyone to be rested for the playoffs, and you need them rested. You see that the fatigue can't set in quite early in the playoffs when guys play that much. So. All right. Now looking at the Central Division, it is a tough one. You're looking at the top. You got Colorado, you got Dallas, you got Winnipeg, Nationals, and Minnesota is going to probably be better this year. Utah, who knows what they made a lot of upgrades defensively, and I don't know what they're going to be. Chicago also added a lot of veterans, so it is actually an interesting division to follow this year. Where do they stack up in here? Are they in the middle? Are they around the same as last season, or could they maybe be in that top tier now with their additions?
I see them as a top tier team. I wrote down in my notes. I don't think it's unreasonable for the Nashville Predators and their fans to expect nothing less than a second place finish
Hmm.
because uh the Dallas Stars are getting so old. They're so beaten up. I know they have such a great core, but that they're gonna have to take a step back.
Hmm.
Maybe it isn't this year. Maybe their step back is being a wild card team,
Yeah.
but I don't see them challenging for that first spot. I still think Colorado probably has the first spot in this division. That'll be for a different video. But I think that they're probably the front runners. I see them as better than the Jets. I see them as better than the Blues. I see them as better than those teams. I really really trust that they have this offense figured out. And it might take a few games, like I was saying before. But I think that at the end of the season, you'll see that this Predators team will they'll be at least second, and they'll have home ice advantage for at least the first round. I really, really see them having that this year.
They are pretty strong in all areas now. Like I think their biggest, we mentioned it, their biggest issue I think was just not scoring enough goals. They were pretty much reliant on that top line for scoring, and if they weren't scoring, there wasn't much else. And now they've got a second line of attack, and arguably is a top line on other teams. I and yeah, that's going to make a huge difference, I think, too. So I see them probably in that range. I think they're probably in the top three. And I don't know, Dallas could take a step back this season. Every time I say a team's going to take a step back, they don't. So I'm bad with the Boston Bruins. I'm going to stop saying that they're going to because they just never do. So we'll see what happens in that division this year. All right, let's get to our quick fire round, and these can just be a quick one or two sentence answer. So let's start with the biggest storyline or question mark for the Predators going into this season.
Biggest storyline for me is how the new offensive additions, like we talked about, how they're just going to gel with the team. Who's playing with who's going to play with Ryan O'Reilly? Who's playing with Tommy Novak, like we said before? What the lines are going to be? They'll figure it out. I don't see it being that big of an issue, but I think that's just a big storyline heading into the season of how's it going to work? How's everyone going to gel with each other? That to me is just the biggest storyline heading into the season.
Mhm. For sure, especially, I mean, Stamkos is so used to playing in Tampa Bay. We'll see how he kind of adjusts to a system that he's played in John Cooper's system so long, moving to Andrew Brunette's. I mean, I don't know how much difference it'll be, but it is going to be probably a little bit of an adjustment period. So we'll see. All right, one or two breakout stars. I mentioned one. I think Evangelista has a big chance of this, but who do you think is going to break out this season?
And so my breakout star was Luke Evangelista. I'll also put Tommy Novak in there as well because because as a center he'll have those great wingers. But to talk about Evangelista, it's a bit of a personal connection for me. When I originally started out sort of in this business, Luke was one of my first interviews.
Oh, nice.
I know. I've met Luke a couple of times. And I just last year for a rookie season, I really thought that he had a great season. I would have liked for him to even challenge a little bit more,
Mhm.
maybe be like a top five for the Calder. He wasn't there yet, but I think that with having Stamkos, having Marchessault, if he gets some time with that, I think he's going to capitalize on that because he really really impressed a lot of people last year. He's got a ton of upside. And like I said before, I think Tommy Novak,
Mhm.
being the center with those wingers, I think that this will be a good season for him. And just another reason why this is a big year for Evangelista. This is his contract year. He's an RFA at the
Mhm.
end of the season, so he's going to be looking to get that Jeremy Swayman money that we're all waiting for.
Yeah, I think he's gonna have a good season too. Especially, I think Evangelista could potentially be on, of course, be on the power play with some of those guys, and get something going there. So we'll see. All right, other side, someone that needs to bounce back this season that didn't have a good season last year.
So this might be a bit of I put this player down, but not for a reason because they had a bad season.
Mhm.
It's more because they need to have a great season. So I put UC Saros as my bounce back, even though again he didn't have a bad season. He was probably a big reason of why they made the playoffs last year.
Mhm.
But my whole thing with this quote unquote bounce back season is this the Predators have now committed to you for the majority of your prime. This
Yeah,
is your net and you need to prove them right. You need to prove that they made the right decision by committing to you and not committing to Askarov.
right.
So this is why I put him for the bounce back season is because he needs to prove to everyone that this is his net. He deserved that contract. He deserves this net. So my bounce back quote unquote player, I'm going to put UC Stars because I think that this is a big year for him because he's got to prove a lot of people this year.
Yeah, that's a good one because big contract. Yes, he's not getting paid that money now, but it is something that's going to be. He is the goalie for the future. He basically took over the goalie of the future, the guy that was supposed to be his. So, yeah, and especially all the trade rumors. I don't know if any of them were true, going around him before the extension, and but now he's here for the long haul, and we'll see if he can live up to it or be better, even better than what he's already been. All right, someone or something that could be an X factor this season for the Predators.
Oof. Well, when you talk about something being an X factor, the Nashville Predators probably have one of the loudest buildings in all of the National Hockey League. So
Hmm.
their fish throwing, song singing fans will probably be a huge X factor for them this year because they have one of the loudest arenas. We saw that when they went to the Cup final. Oh, well, let me date this back. 7 years ago. Wow, that was a long time ago. But we saw really for the first time how loud and energetic that building is. So those Predators fans are they're a huge X factor. That they're the example that sports fans bring to it. Like fans add to the game, fans add to the game that's being played. So an X factor, I'm gonna say it might be a bit off the board, but I love but the Predators fans doing their whole "you suck, it's all your fault." Like that's gonna be a big X factor for them, especially if they want to make deep runs.
For sure, and they've got a couple other players to be really excited to watch too, that are going to be exciting to watch. So yeah, that is a big X factor for sure. All right, let's talk some prospects, rookies prospects. First, is there anyone that could surprise and make the roster we're not expecting at this point?
So I saw recently, I couldn't find the tweet, but I saw that the Predators were really, really impressed with how Tanner Molendyk has done in
Hmm.
development camp and how he was doing in their rookie games. Tanner Molendyk out of the WHL who they drafted late in the first round in 2023, and apparently he could be challenging for a spot this year.
Hmm.
Which, as a fan, as someone who watches the World Juniors, I hope he doesn't. As a
Yeah.
Canadian fan who watches the World Juniors, I hope he doesn't. But they're saying that they were really impressed with his skating and really impressed with his game. So as a rookie that could potentially make the team, um, I could see it, especially because they love their defense in Nashville. They love a good defensive core, and if they're going to add to that, he might be what's his name? Chicago Blackhawks. I'm forgetting his name. Why am I forgetting his name? Um, Korchinski. That might be, he might be like
Penske,
Kevin.
yeah.
He
I
might
was
be like Kevin Korchinski. Sorry. He might be like Kevin Korchinski did last year, and make the Predators out of camp right the year before he was eligible for the AHL.
Yeah, definitely. And the thing is, like, yeah, it looks like their defense is set, but he could get the 9 games at least, and who knows? I mean, he could make the team and play the season, but he's gonna have to beat out a couple, probably a veteran to do so, and we'll see how he does in training camp. All right, outside of guys that could make the team, what other prospects should everyone be watching this season for the Predators?
Um, uh, simple prospect, Matthew Wood out of the University of Minnesota,
Oh yeah.
15th overall, I believe, in 2023. Uh, he's really gonna. It's really on him to decide whether he wants to go pro. Seems like he doesn't want to go pro right now. Wants to stay at the University of Minnesota. So that'll be a good. He's a really really interesting player. I really like watching this player in the times I've got to. He's moving from UConn to University of Minnesota, so he'll get to play against some of the really 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 tough teams in the NCAA. So you get to see how he progresses against teams like Boston College, Boston University, and Michigan State. So he's an interesting one. Also, watching Callan Lind in the WHL, already signed. Predators seem to really like this guy. Feisty little player. Really really interesting player, and I think that's another guy that Predators fans should be interested in watching.
I love Matthew Wood, and not just because he has the same first name as me, but I followed him throughout his draft year, and I wrote his draft profile too. I really like how he plays. I think he's going to end up being a really good NHLer at some point, but he won't obviously because being in college here, so it'll take a bit for him to get to the NHL. But I think he has a lot of upside too. I'm really interested to see how he kind of plays with a different team this year too. So it's gonna be interesting. All right, this could be actually this is probably not an easy one with the additions they made, but who is going to lead the team in scoring, forwards and defense?
So I originally put Jonathan Marchessault, but I think it's gonna be Phil Forsberg. I think that Phil Forsberg's gonna have he was able to come back from a really bad injury last year that took him out unfortunately, and then and he scored 92 points last year, and now they're gonna add all of this talent in. I think it's only gonna elevate his game even more. And I've been a huge fan of Philip Forsberg for years. I've loved the way he's played, and unfortunately, with Nashville just being not the biggest market, he's sort of hidden out there,
Yeah.
so not a lot of people realize how great of a player he is. But I'm going to go Philip Forsberg. I think he'll crack 100 points. I think I think he'll crack 40 goals at least. And sky's the limit past that for me. And then on the defensive side, and I think I gotta go
Easy
Roman
one.
Yossi. Nothing. I'm not gonna go. I'm not gonna go crazy and say someone else. No, it's got to be Roman Yossi, one of the best defensemen and offensive defensemen in the league.
Yeah, that's an easy one. That's only gonna eclipse him, that's for sure. It may even get more points than what he did with some of the more assists that he's gonna get. Um, he hasn't hit 100 points yet. He got close, not this past season, the season before that, when all the defensemen seem to be getting closer to 100. Yeah, I think Yossi's gonna have a good season. And Forsberg, I still can't believe that the Capitals traded him before he even made the NHL. My gosh, I mean, what would he have been in Washington? But that's something I'm sure Capitals fans don't want to hear. All right, let's talk about some bold predictions or a hot take for this season. What do you got?
Uh, hot take. I think Central Division champions. I think is the bold prediction. Uh, I think that the sky is the limit for this team this year with the additions they made. Barry Trotz clearly has a goal in mind, and it's to bring the cup
Yeah.
to bring the cup back or to bring the cup to Nashville for the first time. Thinking, if the Golden Knights can do it, if the Panthers can do it, why can't we? I think that's what the bold prediction. He wants a cup. He wants it badly, and he wants to bring it back to Nashville.
Well, I mean, it may not be as bold because they do have a really strong team. It was just gonna a matter of being how is everything meshed together? Does Stamkos and Marchessault fit in and can do the same that they did in the last couple of seasons or few whatever their whole career, scoring and just I think they will. They're both really. I think they'll fit in the what Andrew Brunette does. So, yeah, this team is going to be a really high powered team offensively, and of course, we already know they're good defensively. So, I think they're going to be a good team this year too. All right. Well, thanks, Lucas, for coming on the show and talking the Predators for this season. It's pretty exciting to watch. I think this team's going to be really exciting to watch this season. So make sure to check out everything at thehockeywriters.com with all of our coverage that we got, both on the YouTube channel, the Substack, and the site itself. Make sure checking all that out. But until our next preview video, we'll see you next time.